Welcome back to Woke Nation. This is another one of our quick thoughts episodes. I think I did one last week too, but this one's definitely going to be in that category or that genre, only because I'm sure you can tell my throat is going. It's some kind of malicious cold, probably some kind of chemical warfare that they've been. I saw an airplane flying over my house, and it kind of came back and forth maybe 3 or 4 times over the last weekend, and I could have sworn I saw like a weird kind of mist just descending out from this plane as it careened about the heavens, and I'm convinced that whatever's going on with my throat might have something to do with that. Chemical warfare by the government. Who would have thought? I wouldn't be surprised at all, let me tell you. But anyway, what I wanted to talk about really quickly before my throat gives out, I sound like one of those people in the do not smoke commercials, where they have the hole in their throat. But anyway, not to mock them. I wanted to talk about something that I've wanted to talk about for quite some time, but in the vicious kind of news cycles that we have these days, it's hard to really, things move at such a brisk pace, and I talk about this all the time. So it's very hard to talk about issues of the heart. But anyway, environmentalism is something I wanted to kind of bring up because what I've noticed, and this is something that's disturbed me for quite some time, is that you have this sort of weird polarization, or I don't know if that's the right word for it, but look, Democrats and the progressive left have sort of embraced environmentalism and changed the meaning of it to basically form a sort of cultish religion around it. Those of you who have heard of AOC's Green New Deal, I think the UN has a similar policy, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it is indistinguishable from AOC's Green New Deal. All this hysteria around climate change and the like has really been associated with the Democrat and the progressive liberal left, the progressives, it's sort of it's given environmentalism basically a bad name, I think. Because those of us on the right, or right of center, or on the far right, tend to now, and it seems to me, in looking around on the field, just on how people are reacting to um, environmental issues, it seems to me that those who care about the environment and are worried about deforestation or different species being driven to the brink of extinction, and some all the way over the brink and into extinction, get sort of lumped in with the progressive left side of things. Those are those crazy, kill all the elephants and the world's going to end type people, as if the elephant is keeping everything, the ecosystems of the entire world, in perfect harmony and balance. Um, but any people that care about the environment seem to get dismissed rather quickly as progressive leftists, and those on the right, because of the hysteria of the left, those on the right tend to ignore environmentalism and actually tend to we've allowed the progressives to take the word environmentalism and make it into and basically to bastardize the definition of the word. Bastardize. That's not the right word. I have took a lot of cough medicine, so excuse me. But they've changed the definition of this word, and we've allowed them to do it. So that environmentalism today, because of the change in the way that culture has perceived the word, we associate it with the hysteria surrounding climate change. And so anyone that cares about, say, the deforestation in the Amazon is instantly lumped in with climate change hysteria. Um, just case in point, there are very, very few conservatives on the right that I hear today talking about any kind of the issues with the environment or species extinction. Um, just as an example, the only time you really hear about the deforestation in the Amazon is you'll remember recently they had those fires down in the Amazon, and you know, a lot of the conservative media, like Tucker Carlson, who I do like, but they spent more of their time debating whether the left was exaggerating the extent of the fires. And exaggerating the cause of or fabricating the cause of the fires, you know, blaming it on global warming and the drying out of the Amazon, which is sparking these massive fires. That's controversial. There is nobody's sure yet what has caused these. A lot of the fires are man-made. So, my point is that a lot of the attention that was put on the fires in the Amazon by right-wing journalists and media um, wasn't they didn't focus on the fact that okay, maybe the progressives go over the brink a lot of the time with their hysteria, but at the same time, let's be honest, there's a very real issue here. There's a very real problem with the deforestation in the Amazon. Am I convinced that there is man-made global warming? No, absolutely not. I don't think the evidence bears that out. I think calmer minds in the scientific field are starting to pop their heads up above the rampart a lot more. They're becoming a lot more brave in asserting their opinion that maybe we got off a little too quickly on this thing and it's really not as dire as it was meant to sound. Um, I don't want to get into the whole political aspect of it. You know, my personal belief that this whole climate change thing that the politicians are peddling is there for power and to take away liberty, like AOC's Green New Deal, has absolutely nothing to do with the environment or climate change. It is an actual implementation of socialism across our culture. It has nothing to do with the environment or anything of the like, or rhinos going extinct in Africa. Absolutely not. She doesn't care. She doesn't know. But it is a tragedy that if you voice concern over the fires in the Amazon, then you're branded as a leftist, climate change hysteric, somebody who's bought into propaganda, and the fires are not really as bad as they seem. You idiot! You shouldn't listen to CNN? Well, okay, maybe the fires were exaggerated, maybe they weren't. But what's not exaggerated is the fact that there's massive deforestation going on in the Amazon. Maybe it has been cut back a little bit since Bolsonaro has taken power. Maybe it hasn't. But what's not debatable is that large swaths of rainforest have been cut and burned down, clear cutting and clear burning by farmers down there to make way for pea fields and cattle grazing and the like. This is beyond dispute. It's not. It's there. It's a fact. You can see the pictures from the satellites. You know, you can see the deforestation in the Amazon just from a satellite, from the pictures they take. So whether you're on the right or the left, it's indisputable that deforestation is happening. It's a real thing, and that am I convinced that it is the cause of global warming? No, I'm not. But at the same time, that does not mean that it is a good thing. It does not mean, and I'll get to this in a second, that is the Christian way to treat the earth. Secondly, when it comes to animals, the left largely, ironically, largely ignores the mass extinction of rhinos and elephants and the like. You don't see or hear a whole lot about that. Perhaps that has something to do with the fact that China, which is largely in bed with the progressive socialist left in this country because they are communists, the ivory trade goes straight through Hong Kong. Maybe it has something to do with that. I don't know. You'd be amazed at how corrupt a lot of these governments and how they're wrapped. They have tentacles wrapped around everything. And just because our officials are in government and supposedly there to uphold the law does not mean that they are not making money off of black market operations. Ivory being case in point. I digress, though. But When's the last time you heard the progressive left raising awareness about the mass slaughter of rhinos in Africa? The only speaker I've ever heard, and he's a conservative, that I've ever heard raise the subject of the extinction, or the board teetering on the edge of extinction existence of rhinos in Africa, and the constant poaching for ivory of elephants in Africa is Michael Savage. He's brought it up on his podcast many times, and for that I tip my hat to him. But besides that, you never hear about it. And I wonder why that is. Is it because that it's just not a money issue? Um, I fail to see how this is not a problem, and how people that in one breath suddenly care about the Amazon being burned down and want to debate whether we're exaggerating the fires or not exaggerating the fires. Meanwhile, there is a thriving ivory trade going on in Africa through Hong Kong and worldwide. Millions, hundreds of thousands of pounds of ivory are shipped around the world on the black market on a daily basis. I've seen documentaries on this stuff. It is insane. And nary a word is actually spoken about it. And if you do speak about it, many on the right will quickly ban you or label you a progressive, climate, environmentalist hysteric. And those on the left will largely may pat you on the back, give you the peace sign. But where are they on this? Where is AOC on things that actually matter? She doesn't know anything or know for a fact that the environment is really going to crap because of people. She doesn't know that. This is all, I always hit the camera. This is all speculation. But what's beyond speculation is that rhinos, black and white rhinos, are teetering on the edge of extinction because of poaching. And we're where are the fines? Where is the action that our government has taken against China and other countries who support the ivory trade? Where is the action? We're all big and bold when it's a big money issue that the voters are all clamoring about, and they can get reelected if they just point their China, you shouldn't do that. But where are the men of conscience on these issues? They wanted us to make us believe that they are people of conscience. We care about the environment. 12 years till we're dead. Well, tomorrow the rhinos will all be dead. Screw your 12 years. They don't even have 12 days, and you've said nothing about it. And then getting lastly to my last point, what is the right, not just the conservative right, but the moral right way to handle this? Well, it's very simple. When God made the earth, and on the sixth day, Adam and Eve, finally man was created. It says in the book of Genesis that he gave man, male and female, dominion over his creation. It says that he put the earth as a footstool under man's feet, so that he could reign over it. But that comes with a burden of responsibility. If you read the Genesis accounts, it talks, and also the prophetic accounts in the Bible of what the new heavens and the new earth will look like. You get such symbolism as the lion laying down with the sheep, the sheep. These creatures that are normally one is prey and one is predator, living in harmony and peace. That's the picture that you get in Genesis as well. Adam did not burn and pillage his way through the Garden of Eden, burning vast swaths of forest down as he went. And I find it interesting. This is a money issue. Just quickly as a side note, this is a money issue because I've read accounts from actual environmentalists down in the Amazon forest who have talked about sustainable farming. There is a way of doing this where you don't deplete the forest of all of its natural resources completely and leave it shattered, ecosystem shattered and depleted. There's a way of taking out and putting back in at the same time so that it keeps the forest in perfect balance. This concept that we just arrived and all of a sudden, there's too many people and so the forest must go and it's an inevitable thing because there's 7 billion people is nonsense. There have been large groups of people living around the Amazon rainforest for centuries, and it lived largely without being depleted and pillaged and burned to the ground until big corporations and these massive enterprises, all bent on money, focus their attention down there. When our countries in the industrial age um, achieved great wealth, but it was built off of the backs of poor people in other countries. I know I sound like a socialist right now. All right, there's more to the picture. I just don't have time to get to all of it. But the point is that in this competitive world today, these poor countries like Brazil and others, they're not taught to look ahead, at sustainable farming as take put back in what you take out of the forest. They're not taught that in any way, shape, or form. They're desperate to survive, and they see America up on the hill, this beacon of competitiveness and global dominance. And if they need to chop down their rainforest to be like America, then dang it, they will do that. And that's what they're being taught. It's also ironic and very hypocritical that the United States will lecture Brazil on the depletion of the Amazon rainforest when the first thing that we did when we discovered America was burn and raze all of our forests to the ground. The Christian nation of America, the first thing they did was push the forests out, chop them all down. The timber industry was booming for centuries until the buffalo were dead and the temperate rainforests were pushed back, other species bordering on extinction, and then here we are lecturing Brazil. Now, I find it extremely ironic, and so did President Bolsonaro. Um, but that doesn't change the fact that we still, as Christians, have a responsibility to the environment at large, to all creatures. There should not be greedy exploitation of these animals. And you're not an extreme leftist or a progressive climate change alarmist to simply point out that, hey, the Amazon is whether you believe the dire warnings about it reaching a tipping point where there is no turning back. In other words, the deforestation reaches such an extent that the forest cannot basically it's no longer in balance as an ecosystem, and it dies. A dying forest. There's scientists that say that if the Amazon rainforest was to reach 50%, where half of it was deforested, then the rest of the forest would just die inevitably. That tipping point they're talking about, which they say is not that far off, because we've already depleted 20% of the original Amazon old growth rainforest. 20, 15, 20, 30 years from now, we could reach that 50% mark, and then the forest may potentially die. That is controversial. We don't know that for sure, but one thing is for sure. Why do we need to deplete half of the rainforest? Why do we have to destroy half of the Amazon rainforest and push all these species into extinction? We know beyond a shadow of doubt that if we actually took the time to not cut down mass acres of trees in the rainforest and instead study the trees, we would actually find cures for the diseases that are plaguing us. But our officials do not care about that. They're not interested in finding the cure for AIDS or cancer, at least not for us. I doubt that very much. I think they're much interested in diseases like that, killing us off and keeping the population scared and in balance. You can call me crazy for thinking that if you want, but I think I have good reason to believe things like that when you really read about what's going on today. But why push the rainforest to such an extent? Why allow the mass slaughter of mountain gorillas in the Congo rainforest? I mean, this is stuff that's without excuse. There are trained military guards that patrol the Congo rainforest in the Democratic Republic of Congo, constantly by boat, by jeep, on safari, with AK-47s, willing to get into the middle of shootouts with poachers. This stuff is deadly serious. You can watch documentaries of it on Netflix, and I would encourage you. There's one called Virunga. No, it's very good, very eye-opening. The same goes in the Amazon. There are people that have to, with their lives, defend because they recognize the importance of God's creation. Now, of course, there's an order here, a hierarchy. We are made in the image of God. An animal is not. But again, that does not give man the right to just rape and pillage the earth at will for his own, using his dominance as an excuse. A dominance that today I find extremely ironic, by the way, because after all, we are the evolutionary product of these animals. We are nothing but highly evolved species, so where do we get the right? Killing mountain gorillas, our ancestors, essentially, our brothers and sisters, in the Congo rainforest. Explain that, riddle me that. Um, but anyway, I just wanted to kind of put that out there. Think about it. Um, and maybe realize that when you see two sides polarized like that, based on two extremes, one of them where, like the conservatives almost never talk about environmentalism, never talk about it, never. You won't hear about it. You'll hear about big business and capitalism from people like Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk and defend Israel, but the Amazon can burn to the ground. You won't hear about it. And then on the left, all you hear about is the world's about to end because we cut down a few trees. Somewhere in the middle is the truth. And the truth still ain't pretty because we're chopping down far more trees than we should. And the excuse that, well, we're planting trees too. I heard Jordan Peterson say that in North America, there's actually more trees than there's ever been. That's not the point. Cutting down old growth forest, there's no comparison between that and we cut down 20,000 old growth trees in an old growth forest, and we planted 40,000 spruce trees over here. There's no comparison. There are delicate ecosystems that's been destroyed over here, and you've created an unbalanced ecosystem over here. I mean, uh, you don't even have to be an ecologist or a scientist or a biologist or anything of that nature to understand that there's no comparison between the two. Anyway, give it some thought. Don't buy into the hype on either side. And good night, and God be with you.